Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today I'm going to be doing a quick one. I'm just going to show you my method for proofing my sourdough. I have some einkorn sourdough that is just at the point where it needs to proof for about 3.5 hours or so. And so you could just put this on your counter, but I like to put it in a proofing box at a certain temperature so that I can manage the process a little easier. Now you can go and buy proofing boxes online. Some of them are very expensive. I made my own. So this is just a 10 by 10 cardboard box that I have sealed on the bottom and on the sides with just packing tape. And I have this little, as you can kind of see here, I have this little flap that just comes off. You open it up and it's just empty inside. But I've also put some tape in each one of the corners as well, so you can see down here, just to seal things off as best I can. I also put some tape in the bottom. But what I do is I use a couple of different items. So I have this little, it's kind of like a cooling rack, right? Just little cooling rack. It's just a square one, not too rectangular, but just more square than anything. And I also will use these little, they're almost like shot glasses. You can use shot glasses or little dipping trays, as long as they're, a few inches, 3 inches or so. I use about 4 of those. But then I also have a heating pad that will go into the box and a little thermometer. And so let's get this set up and I will show you how this works. Okay, so the very first step is to plug in your heating pad, which I have in the outlet over there. And then I'm just going to take this and set it flat inside the box. Try to get it as flat as you can. Just kind of push down on it a little bit. See? Easy peasy. And then this little cord should come up on one side and should kind of, well actually, let's put it toward the back here since it'll be less, pulling on it a little less. So you have the cord on one corner, you have your heating pad that is flat. Then the next step is we are going to take our 4 little shot glasses here and we're going to put one in each corner, not all the way in the corner, but more in the center, just like so. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we have it. Next, I am going to take our grate and I'm going to put that down inside. And that way it rests on top. And there's some space between the heating pad and the bowl of our sourdough that's going to go down into there. Because the reason I do this is because I want the heat to rise, obviously, and to fill the box, but I don't want the heat directly underneath the bowl because it can make your dough a lot harder to work with and can actually kind of almost liquefy the dough if you're not careful. So there we have our setup. There's probably about 3 inches or so of space between the bottom of that heating pad and the grate. And then you just take your sourdough that needs to proof for several hours and I'll drop that down inside, and that way it looks and sits very nice. So you can see it is just perfectly nestled inside of the box. So the next thing that I'll do is make sure everything's set the way I like it. I will then close, actually I do it this way. I'll then close this box like so. This little piece of tape that kind of sits loosely, I will pat down a little bit. And then I usually will take just a dish rack towel and lay that over the top, like so. And then for the final step, I take the thermometer here, turn it on, make sure you turn on your heating pad. I'm gonna set it to medium just to get it up to heat. And then we can see here the ambient temperature of the house is about 72 degrees. And so there's a little hole here in the corner that you can just slide that into. So just so you can see it, this needle with just kind of goes right down in the corner, and then I will leave that there. That way I can check to see what the ambient temperature of the proofing box is. Ideally for me, I like to do about 82 to 84 degrees and keep that on a consistent basis for the proofing period, which again is about, anywhere from 3 hours to 3.5 hours. Any higher than that, you really don't want to go any higher than that. I think over time they found that 80 to 85 range is kind of perfect for sourdough proofing. So you can see this is already rising in temperature, and we'll come back here in just a few minutes to see where we're at. All right, so it's only been a few minutes, and you can already see here we're at 80 degrees. And so that's just a couple of minutes on medium. So you can adjust this to high, medium, or low, depending on which one you have. But if you have a heating pad, just think medium for a few minutes, and it really gets the job done. So just in a few more minutes here, we'll be at the range I want to be in. And at that point, usually I have found that if I just leave it on medium, it stays around that 84, 85 range. You can keep an eye on it as you check routinely to see over those 3 hours or 3.5 hours, however long you are doing your proofing, that if it starts to get too high or too low, you can adjust it, right? So you can dial this back, put it down to low, or go up higher. I have found, luckily for this particular heating pad that I have, I can really just leave it on medium, and it tends to hover around that 82, 84, 85 kind of range. That's perfect, and I can just leave it the entire time. But you do want to check in on it just to be safe. And I did measure this box, and it's a 12 by 12 box, not a 10 by 10. So if you can find a 12 by 12, it works great for one loaf. If you're proofing, maybe 2 loaves, you might want to get maybe a longer box to do both of them, and a longer cooling rack to go inside of it. But for just one loaf, and if you're just the home baker, kind of like I am, and you're doing this for your family or for yourself, and you're only making one loaf, this is a wonderful, easy way to do it, and it works like a charm. So even just in the amount of time I've been talking here, we're going up even more. So this will eventually kind of plateau and stay around that range we like to see. So we'll give it just a few more minutes. All right, I think we're just about done here. This is started to plateau off a little bit, so it might climb a little higher to 84, maybe 85, but at a medium, with the heating pad set to medium, this is really starting to kind of plateau. So that's wonderful. That's what I want to see here. So I'm gonna just leave this be. Usually during that sourdough process, if you're familiar, after you do a series of stretch and folds, you end up putting this on your counter to let it do a proofing or a bulk ferment for, it could be several hours. And so the reason you would want to use something like this is to speed up that process. So you don't have to use a proofing box. It's not required to make sourdough bread. You can just leave your bowl on your counter and let it do its thing. You want to see it generally rise, 20 to 30%, depending on the sourdough you're baking. So for me, I use it to speed things up. And so this process can go a little bit faster. You can move the process along by really creating an environment for the sourdough to thrive and to rise a little quicker. Be careful, you don't want to over-proof your bread, so you definitely want to keep an eye on it and stick to a schedule. If you find after a few experiments, I know that at 83 degrees, it's 2.5 hours, 3 hours, check in. You can open this up, check in on your dough to see if it's risen 20, 30% in that time. And you'll know whether you're ready. The other good thing about this, and another reason you might want to make one of these, is you can use it for your levain or your starters, right? So if you create a levain and you want to, speed up that process, instead of waiting maybe 12 hours, you can cut it down to 8 or what have you. You can put a jar of your levain inside here and let it have a warmer environment. So, you can also just go online and buy these things. It's so much easier to find a box, put a little bit of tape, and it's just super easy. Most people already have a heating pad in their house or some sort of thermometer like this. So a quick, easy, do-it-yourself, kind of budget-conscious way of having a proofing box that never fails me. So happy baking, everybody. I hope this was a good tip for you, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.